what can we do about all this? Yeah, it was a scary year. We went through hell, of course, and unfortunately, we're going to continue going through. That's why Churchill's quote is so important to us. Protection and mitigation recommendations. What can we do about this? Well, NIST says, number one, we got to start monitoring, and we've got to employ an independent third party. This is somebody who will tell us the truth, folks. We got to hear the truth about these attacks. We don't need to hear from a vendor after they've lied to us about fixing it, right? We need to know that they haven't fixed it yet, but they're working on it, and they will fix it, and when they fixed it, and how badly did it expose us, or what did we lose because of that access? Really understanding it and having somebody who's there to tell you the truth is important, absolutely critical going forward. And this is in the control mechanisms of 853 Rev 5, the latest Rev from NIST, which is kind of the overarching security, cybersecurity standard, if you will. This is the one that most others borrow from, right? And so understanding this and understanding, and to us, it's really important that we understand the independent aspect here. Why? Because they're going to tell you the truth. You're going to tell your vendors the truth. Somebody like us who's there to look over your shoulder and tell you the truth. How do we stop this? How do we prevent it from happening in the first place? What are we doing wrong, folks? Got to understand that as it's happening. When we talk about monitoring, it can't just be outside monitoring. It can't just be sitting there looking at firewall logs and hoping we find everything. Not going to happen anymore. Why? Because these are sophisticated attacks, cut up into pieces and hiding very well, and polymorphic and other things. Really, the purpose of these attacks is to hurt us. How can we defend? Well, we can defend by increasing the entire security stack, of defense in depth approach. Monitoring has to be one of those key aspects, and it has to be an independent third set of truthful eyes whose job it is to make sure that they can see all these things. They're watching the behaviors, they're understanding it. They're hopefully using things like machine learning and artificial intelligence. But then again, they're helping us human to human. I can't tell you enough how important that is. And understanding our data, understanding of an inventory of all the connected parts, what's important to us most? Well, maybe that's what we need to protect the most, right? Assuming they're going to get in, how have we done these things to understand the nature of our data, how it flows things, and where can they attack us? Where can they do the most damage? So really understanding it. And then we're going to talk more about backups, right? The 3-2-1 rule. We've said this hundreds of times. Why? Because it's important. When the bad happens, if we've got good backups, then, well, it's less effective on the badness. Colonial Pipeline, they had backups. Baltimore City, when they got hit by Robinhood, they had backups. They were able to eventually recover because they had it. So understanding your backups and making sure they didn't get hacked too is why we have the 3-2-1 rule. Prepare your recovery. You must have 3 backups, 2 different types of media. Why? Because it's much harder for them to destroy a thumb drive in your desk with the data on it than your NAS, your network access storage that's always available, right? And then let's actually take one off to a DR site, or even better, what if it wasn't online? Like putting that USB of the golden master image of all of our computer-aided dispatch devices, all our CAD devices, in a drawer. How difficult is that? Well, it is difficult unless you did it while you're building it and you took those few moments out. And then you put this in the plan, right? We have to understand. And part of that plan is to test it, right? Can't tell you how many times backups don't work. And the worst possible time is when
we can. In a study done that I was actually just mentioning, so 43% of all corporate backups were able to be restored. The definition of restored was being able to get back 75% or more of your data. So we can't actually know if it was actually 43% that were able to be restored, or if it was less than that. But 43% could be restored, almost 60% could not. That's why you have to have the 3 backups, is because, okay, so 40% of the time it works, of the remaining 40% of the time it works, of the remaining, you come out to 80%. But even if you're doing 3 backups and you're doing everything right, 20% of the time your backups are just going to fail you. It's just one of the unwritten rules of IT.
Yeah, it's really, and it's all about being prepared, right? So you have to have a plan. You have to define what data needs to be backed up. You've got to determine how often should we back it up. In other words, how much are we going to lose if we lose access for a week? Was it a month? Was it 6 months? And if it's evidentiary data, it might be a few minutes is bad, right? We really need to look at that. Choose the reliable backup solution that fits your needs. It doesn't have to be over-engineered here, folks. Keep it simple, but make sure it's working. And that's really when we come into the test and monitoring those backups, because you don't want the backups to be hacked. Use different set of credentials to set those up. Use different access so that it's unique in so many different ways. And then maybe disconnect it when it's not being used, right? All right, and then let's talk about incident response plans. We have to have them, folks. We plan for everything else. We have to have a plan, and we have to understand what our steps are going to be, and we have to write it down, including who to call, how to communicate that plan. And then we need to test it like we test everything else. So have a plan, communicate your plan, and then test it, folks, whether it's a tabletop, and include your vendors, especially the critical ones, because they need to do it. When we talk about implementation planning, sometimes people call these COOP plans, et cetera. It's a contingency plan. What are we going to do if, right? Well, if we have to go to manual, let's find out how. Let's make sure everybody's trained in how to do that. And then we can partner with sister organizations for support and understand how did they recover, how did they do it, or can they take the load for a while you're recovering, and vice versa. Consider third-party vendors and services as part of this. Make sure they have a plan too. Put it in the RFP. What are you guys doing if this happens? Prepare physical copies of critical documents. Print it out. I love trees, but I also want to make sure that if we lose all the computers, we still have something written down. And it could be as simple as, this is who we're going to call first, right? And consider us on that list. We're here to help. And consider a cyber insurance, but not for paying the ransom. Make sure that they aren't focused on just paying. Read about them. Let's do some research. Do you guys always pay, or are you going to authorize us to bring in vendors who may be expensive and help us recover so that it doesn't happen again, like the 84% of time I mentioned before? Now, when I think of an incident, this is what I have in my mind, folks. This is the thing that is burned into my retinas. What are we going to do? Well, first we're going to prepare for an incident, and that's the training, the other aspects, because if we do that right, maybe it never happens. But when it does happen, we need to detect it as soon as possible, not 101 days too late. Let's really up our game there. Right now, the average detection time is 84 days. That's bad. Let's fix that. And then how do we isolate, contain the badness before it spreads, or to keep it as small? That might be architecting, it might be preparation, or it might be taking those machines offline. It depends on the situation. And then let's learn from it and share that knowledge so that it doesn't happen again as part of the cycle, right? All right, go to DHS. They have some great stuff. There are good ways to do it. We're always helping you get there. How do you get there? Well, if you go to